Ann Arbor, 1926. An underground spring has just turned a stadium construction site into a voracious pit of quicksand, swallowing a massive crane whole. But Michigan's athletic director, Fielding Yost, refuses to halt the dig. His relentless obsession is driving him to build the biggest stadium American sports will ever see, setting off an explosion of frantic sport arena construction across the country. 100 years later in Los Angeles, the translucent canopy of SoFi Stadium glints in the California sun. At $5 billion, it is the absolute pinnacle of stadium building. A revolutionary screen, a state-of-the-art dome, and the host of football's biggest games, all nestled in North America's second-largest media market. You'd assume this crown jewel is the largest stadium in the country. It's not even close. With just over 70,000 seats, SoFi sits at an underwhelming 34th place. The NFL prints money, yet in pure game attendance, they are getting blown out of the water by amateurs. Of the 14 largest stadiums in America, 0 belong to a pro team. While billionaire NFL owners build modest arenas in mega cities, small college towns are packing 107,000 screaming fans into colossal monuments like Michigan's Big House. But both leagues have rabid fan bases. Both could easily fill the seats. So why is the richest professional sports league in the world playing in the shadows of college amateurs? Because the two were born playing completely different rules. Harvard, Yale, and Princeton quickly became the epicenters of this high-adrenaline, violent sport in the 1870s. The gladiatorial battles drew massive crowds who couldn't get enough of the gritty, brutal, and sometimes deadly action. 40,000 people showed up to watch Yale and Princeton duel it out in 1891, with attendance records breaking again and again over the decades. As more and more wealthy and fiercely loyal alumni returned to support the game, it was like throwing gasoline onto the fire. But the crowds were growing out of control. To accommodate the masses, universities started hastily erecting massive wooden bleachers. But these towering wooden structures were ticking time bombs. If a crowd surged too violently during a thrilling touchdown, the creaking timber would give way like a splintering grenade, sending hundreds of students plummeting violently to the earth. And if a rivalry game ended in a bitter, controversial loss, the enraged students were known to just set the entire wooden stadium on fire. The colleges realized they couldn't keep building temporary fire hazards. They needed the permanence only concrete and stone could provide. So in 1895, the University of Pennsylvania constructed Franklin Field, a dedicated athletic ground that cost $100,000, a staggering sum at the time. But it was Harvard that truly altered the landscape in 1903. They unveiled the nation's first permanent, massive concrete U-shaped stadium, a monolithic structure inspired by Greek and Roman architecture that held 30,000 spectators. It was an architectural marvel that dwarfed anything the professional leagues could even dream of. The colleges had successfully built an empire of concrete and steel, and the money was flowing in faster than they could count it. But just as these universities established themselves as the undisputed kings of American sports, they were entirely unaware that a glowing, buzzing box being developed in laboratories across the country was about to threaten their entire business model and spark a legal war that would reshape the economy of football forever. By the 1940s and 50s, a strange new piece of technology was creeping into American living rooms: the television. Initially, some colleges embraced it. The University of Pennsylvania started commercially broadcasting their football games in 1940, beaming the gridiron directly into local homes. More people could watch the games, and everyone was happy. But then, the NCAA executives saw the numbers in free fall and panicked. They realized that the crackling black and white broadcasts were parasites, sucking the lifeblood out of the stadiums. If a fan could sit in their warm living room and watch the game for free, why would they brave the cold, pay for a ticket, and cram into the nosebleeds? The massive 80,000-seat concrete cathedrals they had spent decades building were suddenly at risk of becoming ghost towns. The NCAA moved with ruthless efficiency to strangle the golden goose. In 1952, they locked down all broadcast rights into an iron-fisted monopoly. Under their strict new rules, there would be only one televised NCAA game per week across the entire country. No single team could appear on TV more than once a season. It was deliberate, artificially enforced blackout designed for one single purpose: to force the fans out of their houses and physically back into the colossal stadiums. For decades, the NCAA maintained this chokehold. If you wanted to see your team, you had to buy a ticket. The stadiums continued to swell, but behind the scenes, a rebellion was brewing. Powerhouse programs like the University of Oklahoma and the University of Georgia were staring at massive, sold-out crowds on Saturday and realizing they were leaving millions of dollars of national television revenue on the table because of the NCAA's oppressive television blackout. They formed a rogue faction, the College Football Association, and attempted to negotiate their own network TV deals. In 1981, this escalated from a boardroom dispute into an all-out financial Cold War. NBC sports executives, operating in absolute secrecy, slid a rogue 4-year contract across the table to the rebel faction. The number on the page was staggering: $180 million. That is over $500 million in today's money, ready to bypass the NCAA and be injected directly into these universities. When the NCAA brass discovered the backdoor deal, they didn't just issue a warning. They launched a scorched earth campaign. The NCAA dispatched emergency telegrams to the defecting universities with an apocalyptic ultimatum. If these schools didn't immediately tear up the NBC contract, the NCAA would execute a sweeping death penalty. They wouldn't just ban the football teams from television. They threatened to eradicate the school's entire athletic departments. Basketball, baseball, track and field, every single sport would be barred from postseason competition, effectively destroying the university's athletic reputations overnight. It was a multi-million-dollar hostage situation, and the NCAA gave the rebels 48 hours to surrender. The tension snapped. Refusing to back down from the cartel, the schools sued the NCAA, and the war was dragged out of the stadiums and into the highest legal arena in the land for the final showdown. In 1984, the most powerful panel of judges in the land, the United States Supreme Court, heaved their weighty influence directly on the battered sport. In NCAA vs. Board of Regents of the University of Oklahoma, the Supreme Court dropped a devastating 7-2 bombshell on the concrete of the NCAA. The court declared that the NCAA's iron grip on television rights was an illegal monopoly, a blatant violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The ruling rang out like a death knell, shattering the NCAA's control overnight. The television rights reverted back to the individual schools and conferences, instantly opening the floodgates to unimaginable wealth. Massive broadcast networks threw open their checkbooks, pouring billions of dollars into college towns. But this staggering influx of wealth slammed directly into the NCAA's most foundational rule: amateurism. The athletes bleeding on the field, generating this immense television revenue, were legally prohibited from receiving a salary. While the debate over paying student athletes rages to this day and has only recently been fractured by name, image, and likeness, or NIL deals, for decades, the labor cost for a college football roster was effectively zero beyond tuition and room and board. So, college athletic departments found themselves sitting on a mountain of untaxed television cash that they had to spend to maintain their nonprofit status. They poured some into bloated coaching salaries, making college football coaches the highest paid public employees in almost every state. But the vast majority of that cash was poured directly into the concrete. College athletic directors began funneling their untaxed millions into expanding their stadiums into absolute behemoths. But this wasn't just about ego. It was a calculated, psychological weapon designed for one specific purpose: recruiting. Because the NCAA prohibited teams from luring top high school prospects with bidding wars and fat contracts, they had to sell them on pure spectacle. Imagine being a 17-year-old kid from a small town. You are flown onto a campus, walked down a dark concrete tunnel, and suddenly thrust into the blinding light of a Michigan stadium or Penn State's Beaver Stadium. You are hit by a physical wall of sound. Over 100,000 screaming fans clad in a singular, roaring ocean of team colors. It is intoxicating. It is overwhelming. And it works. The sheer scale of the stadium became the ultimate sales pitch to 17-year-old phenoms, and the ultimate playground for the wealthy alumni boosters funding the operation. Bigger was always better. It's sound logic. So why isn't the NFL doing the same math? The NFL is not a nonprofit. It is a ruthless, profit-maximizing corporate machine. And as the league's television ratings have eclipsed all other sports to become the undisputed king of American media, NFL owners realized something crucial. An unsold seat is a visual and financial disaster. If a stadium holds 90,000 people, but only 70,000 show up, the empty aluminum benches broadcast a message of failure on national television. But if you shrink the stadium to 70,000 seats and sell every single one, you create something incredibly valuable: artificial scarcity. The NFL realized that going to a Sunday game shouldn't be a casual, cheap afternoon outing, like a Tuesday night baseball game. It needed to be a premium, highly exclusive event. By keeping stadium capacities relatively small compared to their massive media markets, teams ensured that tickets were nearly impossible to get. This drove secondary market resale prices through the roof, allowing the teams to justify steadily increasing their own face value ticket prices year after year. But the real secret behind the shrinking NFL stadium isn't just about selling out. It's about what they are replacing the bleacher seats with. In recent years, franchises like the Washington Commanders, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Pittsburgh Steelers have taken jackhammers to their own stadiums, ripping out tens of thousands of regular seats. They aren't doing this to downsize. They're doing this to make room for luxury VIP suites. The modern NFL is a high rollers game. To an NFL owner, ripping out 5,000 cheap upper deck bleacher seats to build a tier of 50 enclosed, climate-controlled luxury boxes is a no-brainer. In a single corporate suite, serving chilled champagne and catered steaks to 20 billionaires generates exponentially more reliable revenue than 1,000 working-class fans sitting in the freezing nosebleeds. This is why SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, despite costing $5 billion and sitting in one of the most populated cities on Earth, only seats 70,000 people. It was never designed to pack in the maximum number of human beings. It was designed to extract the maximum amount of money per square foot. Two leagues, playing the exact same sport, moving in completely opposite architectural directions. Which do you agree with? Let us know in the comments below. Then click the video on screen to see how the college and pro game might look the same but are playing by completely different rulebooks. Thanks for watching.